Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. The movie I want to talk about today comes from 1979. This is Serie Noire. Um, this is directed by Alain Corneau, starring Patrick Dewaere, Marie Trintignant, Bertrand Billier, and Miriam Boyer. And it is a film noir through the lenses of Jim Thompson, the great American pulp writer. This is a Radiance release. It's a single release of what was a trilogy of releases called Hard Boiled that Radiance released a couple of years ago. I never bought it, but I didn't realize Serie Noire was based on a Jim Thompson novel, and I've been a big Thompson fan since the re-release, republication of most of his novels in the 1980s. And they've been made into several movies, especially in the 80s and 90s. This is, I read the book. It's based on a book called A Hell of a Woman. But I didn't read, I don't think I ever read that one back in the 80s. And usually I read books before I watch the movie. In this case, I didn't. I read the book afterwards. It's a remarkably faithful adaptation of the novel, though it does exclude the ending, which is more exposition, narrative, explanation that really the movie doesn't need. So it's a story of a man named Frank. That's Patrick Dewaere on the cover here, and he is a 30-something traveling salesman down on his luck. He's never made it in the world. We meet him under the credits. He's in a barren field and he's shadow boxing. We think, he's just having a bit of a lark, but then he goes into all kinds of kung fu maneuvers and shootouts, and we realize something may be wrong with this guy. And he's a traveling salesman. He can't stand his job. He's selling shoddy goods for next to nothing, and then he has to collect the money. It's kind of deal where you buy a monthly installment. You buy his goods. He comes to a decrepit old house. There's a good-looking young woman, and looking out the window at him. When he knocks on the door, an old lady answers. She wants nothing to do with him, but he, in his traveling salesman kind of lingo, he gets his foot in the door and finds that the aunt will buy some goods, but she's not going to pay for it with cash. She's going to pay for it with her niece, the woman that Frank has seen in the window. So she's pimping her niece, and niece willingly offers herself to Frank, and this is played by Marie Trintignant. But Frank doesn't want any part of it. He has this image of himself as somebody noble and honest, which he is not. But he doesn't take advantage of the situation, and the girl then begins to look at him. Well, maybe he's this shining knight that's going to rescue her from this terrible situation she's in with her aunt. And Patrick Dewaere is very tender. He can be just about anything in this film. He's tender here, but he's brutal in other scenes. And it's sort of the tone of the film, which is trying to figure out Frank's character. He's all over the place. He's over the top. Thompson was a writer who Stephen King said he's not only is he over the top, but when he goes over the top, he creates a new top, so he can go over that. You never know where his plots are going, where his characters are going. They're full of surprises, twists, and turns. And you might think, and you spend the whole movie with Frank, and he does a lot of shouting, but Dewaere gives his all to this performance, and he was totally committed to this role. And he didn't want any of the dialogue changed. The screenplay is written by George Perec, who was a kind of experimental novelist, part of a French literary movement called the Lipo, I think it was called. He once wrote I don't know, it was 1,000 pages, a lot of pages, a long novel in which he never used the letter E. So when Alain Corneau learns that he could get George Perec, he really doesn't, to help him write the screenplay, he really doesn't believe it. But Perec was a big crime novelist, aficionado. In fact, Serie Noire was the name of a publication or an imprint house that put out a lot of pulp fiction, especially American pulp fiction, and in France, Jim Thompson was big. He was very popular and very well respected. So we see Frank struggling with a wife, with a boss. Nothing is satisfying to him. Everything seems wrong. His wife doesn't clean the house. His boss is constantly needling him because he suspects Frank of being an embezzler, which Frank is. And so as the plot moves on, a murder plot is kind of hatched. We don't know how it could possibly come about, but we don't know, is Frank really capable of this? He doesn't even know himself. So he's having, obviously, in a more literal sense of the plot, he's having a nervous breakdown, or he's becoming the psychopath that he's always been. Who knows? We don't know. But what's amazing about Dewaere's performance is that he's always entertaining. He's funny at times. It is a look in the book. It's a first-person narrative. So we're with Frank, just as in the book. We're with Frank. We may not be in his mind as we are in the book, but we're seeing everything from his point of view. We see the world as he sees it. It's a dingy. This is a low-budget movie. They used a couple of decrepit, derelict buildings that they made into the ants, where the aunt and the niece live, and then where Frank lives, and everything looks drab. We're on, I guess, the outskirts of Paris, but it's a bleak world, and that's very much suiting to Jim Thompson's view of the world. Thompson's career is really amazing. You can read his story on Wikipedia. There's a biography of him, but he never achieved any kind of success. But he got involved with Lion Publications in the 50s, and they loved him. They nominated one of his books, The Killer Inside Me, I think, to be a National Book Award winner. He wrote 10 novels in 2 years. He just had this creative ferment, and most of his best novels come out of this 2-year stretch. And of course, there's lots of other movies that are made from his novels. There's another French movie that's made around the same time called Coup de Torchon. Now, Coup de Torchon is transposed from the American Southwest to Senegal in Africa in between the wars, right before World War II. It's one of the greatest adaptations. It's just an amazing movie. It's been in the Criterion Collection as a DVD. It's currently playing on the Criterion channel, and it's one, I don't know if it's held up in rights, how it never made the Blu-ray. I don't want to talk about this film because I know as soon as I make a video of it, then we'll have a Criterion 4K come out. The Coup de Torchon is just an amazing film. And then The Grifters was probably one of the most successful adaptations of a Thompson novel in the early 90s with Angelica Houston and John Cusack and Annette Bening. And there's The Getaway, 1972. There was a remake I've never seen, but the 72 version starred Steve McQueen. And Thompson wrote the screenplay to it. When Steve McQueen came aboard, he wanted less talk, more action. If you've ever read the novel that The Getaway is based on, you're in for a surprise because the ending in The Getaway, the novel, is so bizarre. It's what happens to Steve McQueen and Ally McGraw after they go into Paris, after they escape into Mexico. So The Getaway is really more a Steve McQueen movie than it is a Jim Thompson movie. He never achieved fame in his time, but like I say, when these other novels came out, he told his wife when he died, he said, 10 years from now, you mark my words, 10 years from now, they'll remember me. Stephen Frears, who directed The Grifters, he said he thought that Thompson wrote Greek tragedies. Stephen King, who was a Stephen King, somebody else called Thompson a dime store Dostoevsky. These books and many of the adaptations made from them that are faithful to Thompson, you can kind of see it. It's psychologically dense, psychologically interesting. We're entering the minds of madmen, and even though it's bleak, there's some sense of the absurd, of the dark comedy. The actor Patrick Dewaere, who came into prominence when he was in Going Places, I think it was, with Gerard Depardieu a couple of years before. Dewaere is only 33 when he made Serie Noire, and he 2 years after this, at the age of 35, he committed suicide. And he was at the top of his game. It was really a great tragedy. And then Marie Trintignant, who plays the teenage girl who's being prostituted by her aunt, she was the daughter of Nadine Trintignant, actress, and Jean-Louis Trintignant was her father. But at the time of the film, Nadine was married to Alain Corneau, the director of the film. So they were looking for their Marie. It would be a hard part to cast. She's very memorable in the part, and she met a tragic death in the early 2000s. She had a rock star boyfriend who got mad at her, beat her up, and she died soon after from the injuries. As for Alain Corneau, this is the first film of his I've seen. I never got the Radiance box set. I wished I had, because I guess it had a booklet in it, and I'm tempted to get the other two films now that are available singly. Unfortunately, and this always gives me pause when I make a video about a movie, that this is the only place, as far as I can tell, you're going to be able to see this. This is not streaming anywheres, but I think someday it will. This is the kind of movie you might find someday on Canopy. If you're a film noir fan, this is absolutely a must-have. It's got quite a few good supplements, interviews with Corneau at the time, and then later on in 2000, there's a 2002 set of interviews where Marie Trintignant looks back on the film, and she says, that's the best film I've ever been in. And then there's a really nice visual essay about Jim Thompson's career and the adaptations made from his films Hollyhock in a Cornfield, it's called, and it's really worthwhile, especially for Jim Thompson fans. So if you are a Jim Thompson fan, you're a film noir fan, Eddie Muller, I was just watching on YouTube a piece by Eddie Muller, a snippet from his Ask Eddie show, in which he highly praises this film. Maybe it'll show up on Noir Alley someday on TCM. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.